So thank you, Norma and Stephen, for presenting yourself and saying hello. Who else would like to? Tamara, would you like to say hello? Oh, can't really hear you.
Hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Hello for everybody. I'm Latvia.
Sorry, I don't know if everyone else has a problem, but I can only hear you sometimes. Like it's a bit on and off. Sorry about that. No, it's okay, but yeah, it might be the headphones. I don't know. Ah, yes. Or maybe not. No, no. Okay, why don't you sort out your audio and maybe we can, somebody else can say hello. Um, Lee or Mary, you're more than welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. I just come in the door. It's great to be here, and thank you very much for doing these wonderful meetings. It's just marvelous. That's all I want to say. 1 point.
Thank you.
I give
So
my
Mary,
1
just
point.
for those who don't know you, you're a Suzuki piano teacher trainer in Scotland.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
You should also say that not just Scotland. I should have said, in Latvia and originally in Spain. So I'm not in Scotland just.
Yes, that's right.
Lovely. Yeah.
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 Thank you, Mary. Yes, Lee?
Right, I'm a teacher trainer in South Africa, and we are currently working on organizing a level 1 course again, but there are a couple of teachers who are also interested in level 4 violin. And yeah, we're a very, very small little family in South Africa, but we are trying to connect regularly and we're trying to grow.
Thank you, Lee. And just to also say that you are a violin teacher trainer. Yes. It's nice to see that, there's different instruments with the same 1 point interest in Suzuki. Tamara, let's try again. Let's see if I can hear you now.
I think I thought this music is from you, but this music were from me. Sorry, everybody. I am Suzuki now you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. I am Suzuki piano teacher from Latvia. Mary's McCarthy's trainee. We have the Suzuki method since 208 in Latvia. And still are pioneers, and so this topic is for us very important.
Yes, great. Thank you for being here. And last but not least, Ingeborg, would you like to say hello?
Hi. Yes. Hi.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello. I missed a very short introduction because I was speaking to a student. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
The question just to tell who I am. Or...
Yeah, just so that we know who we're talking to.
Yes, I am in the teachers. I am in the training to be a teacher in Antwerpen for Suzuki. I go to level 4, and it's always very how do you say? It's a challenge for me to have this 1 point teaching, to keep that really concentrated on the 1 point, and then
I understand.
I'm very curious how we can learn about how to organize that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good starting point on the 1 point, because sorry, and you're a violin.
Yes, I'm a violin teacher.
Yeah. I thought so, but just double checking. I think that should be our entry point, because when we're doing our training course, we are told that we should focus on the 1 point. I think we should focus on 1 point in the lesson, which makes a lot of sense once you have more experience. But at the beginning, it's quite tricky because you're trying to manage so many different things at the same time. And the more I teach and the more experience I have, the more I can see how important this putting attention to one thing is in the lessons and also in the practice. Basically, our attention can only get so far, and for the student is the same thing. The attention span, the attention in general, and more these days is smaller. The focus is not so massive. If we try to do too many things at once, the student, the parent, and the teacher get lost into too many things, and nothing gets done, nothing happens. So I think we should first address this. How do you find teaching one point in your own lessons? Do you manage to do one point and then get to the same point from different angles, or do you find that this is something that you also struggle with, like Ingeborg said? Anyone can talk.
May I? Because it is something I find myself thinking about and reminding myself, actually, because as you say, there are so many things to comment on and correct and what, but I notice quickly that children are overloaded with information. So it keeps it much, much simpler if I remind myself also, try to focus on one thing, maybe a couple of things. And then at the end, I sort of try to go back to that and point out that that's what we focused on. Sometimes it seems to me like it won't be enough to carry them through to the next lesson.
Mm-hmm.
But we just have to wait and see. And then the next lesson, I ask them again, do you remember that one thing we were talking about? That's all. That's how I think of it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anyone else would like to continue with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I also I agree with Norma. For me, it's an enormous challenge. Even in 1 minute, when I ask something from a student, there are 10 things in my mind, and I can only speak one thing. Like, even, of course, people can call it ADHD, attention. You know that thing?
Yes.
Well, but I think it exists in many ways in people's mind, and there's a lot of knowledge nowadays about how to find the inner peace and how to make inner rest, which is one of the main things I believe that you want to create when a student enters in the studio or in the lesson room. And that is, for me, one of the most confronting facts during the last 3 years of my Suzuki journey, and that I really needed to work on that. And that is also a very beautiful challenge to work on in every phase of the lesson, to maintain a rest and to ask the same thing, even if it is in a very creative way, that you ask the same teaching point, but a little bit with a creative variation.
Mm-hmm.
Then if you can make a beautiful variation, it's fun for yourself and it's fun for the student. So I try to manage it in a way that it is not a fixed thing, that it's a living study point.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Before I go to one of maybe either Stephen or Mary, I'm sure you have lots of ideas on this. Just something that I've been thinking and doing for a while is that sometimes there's one point, like, for example, a technical point that you need to address with a student that carries on for a few weeks. So sometimes one point in the lesson is the same point over and over and over. And that one point isn't something that will take some time to correct or to improve. But then you could have smaller points in the lessons. So something is like an overarching kind of point that goes through, and then you have something more specific for each lesson. And that's something that I sometimes find that is easier, because sometimes there is this particular technical point that is really hard to change. In the violin, it could be, you know, addressing a bow hold or the position. I'm sure in the piano you have something very specific with hand position or how to sit that will take more time than just one lesson. So you need to have something that is more over, you know, a few weeks or months to address. I don't know if Stephen or Mary could join in with any of this. What do you think about that?
Stephen, do you want to? You go.
Yeah, I can go. I mean, I think to some degree it depends what one's definition of 1 point is. It could take several different forms. I remember when I first started teaching, this is sort of fairly obvious 1 point, and I was a bit nervous. It was a 15-year-old boy. He was playing maybe about grade 4, grade 5 level in English terms. And I went along to the lesson and I found there were so many things I could teach him. So it was approximately a 100-point lesson. The poor boy, somehow he managed to keep going with me for about 6 months before he quit. That's one sort of 1 point, is sort of overload. And since we're in a situation working with parents, we can also overload the parent. And if the parent gets overloaded, parents are anxious anyway, it goes with the territory of being a parent, is to be anxious. We make them more anxious. And if they get more anxious, then they will transfer it to the child, I feel. That's my observation. So it's quite good to approach things in a sort of a different way. And I said 1 point can take many forms. So Gwilym, you were talking about something that you would continue for quite a long time as a 1 point. That could be one form. But I also think it's tied in with teaching style. So in the Suzuki world, people often advise not to talk too much when teaching. There's lots of reasons for this, but one is that especially the young child is learning very much for their senses. And we don't really, or I don't, want the parent at home talking too much to the child, because the child will shut down. They'll just stop listening. So I experienced this myself, because my son was a Suzuki cellist, and he started when he was 3.5 with Carrie Beth, and practices at a certain point, maybe when he was 4, weren't going so well. So I asked him what he didn't like about practicing with me, and children are very honest, and he said, "You're too bossy." So I think I was talking too much and probably being too much of a teacher rather than a supervisor. So probably overwhelming him or not letting him have enough freedom at that stage. Anyway, it's a really huge subject you've brought up here. So I'll stop there.
Yes. No, thank you, Stephen. And I think you're touching into the deeper levels of the 1 point that we're going to hopefully get to today. I just wanted to start with the very surface level of just the 1 point in the lesson. But it's completely true. And I think the deeper we understand this 1 point, the easier it gets to understand also the surface level as well. So we can keep talking about that. But is there anyone else who would like to join on what we are saying before we move on to, you know, deeper levels of it? Mary.
Yeah, what one of the things that I feel, and Stephen and I know each other for a very long time, so we know how we think, even though we don't live in the same countries. I think that very often people, when they start Suzuki teaching, don't realize how powerful their playing, their demonstrating is. Because even doing one note on the piano, and in our case, I can get the parent to say, video that, just let them see that every day. I wouldn't have known that, like Stephen's talking about. When I started out, I wouldn't in a million years have work like that, even if I did use videos. So I think less is often more, but it's not really less, it's more, because you're not, when you're starting out especially, you're not realizing how much of your soul goes into your sound. And I mean, people don't see it in the same way in the piano as they would in other instruments, but Stephen and I would agree, it's huge. So that's it.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, very true. The demonstration is what they say, like an image is more powerful than 1,000 words. I think in this case, demonstration is exactly the same. You can say so much by demonstrating, and then the child responds in a much better way. And it can be very clear one point there, you know, in your demonstration. Yes. Thank you, Mary.
And may I just add one little thing when what you said, Mary? Doing less is doing more, is doing less is doing more, and you're creating space in which you can fill that space with something, you know, or nothing, but thoughts even, you know. So that's nice.
Thank you. Yes, just to deepen a little bit on what we are talking about. If we think about our society and how crazy it's getting, and you know, all this overload of information, and really the antidote to this in many ways is the idea of mindfulness, of just staying present to what we're doing and not trying to multitask. Because multitasking is really lying to ourselves. We're not really putting attention to too many things. We're just switching our attention from one thing to the other, which means that we're not really able to put our full attention to something we're doing. And I think that's something we can really help the new generation and the parents to grow with this kind of tool, let's say, this tool to be able to put full attention to something that you're doing, you know, and even when they're playing the instrument in the lesson or practicing at home, they're not just focusing on what they're doing, which is hard, you know, many times they're just like looking around or thinking about what's coming or what happened during the day. Focusing on what they're doing, but also focusing on something very specific, that one point that we're talking about. I think it's our role and our responsibility as teachers to really teach that focused attention, you know, deep attention into something that they're doing, something to improve, whether it's sound, whether it's something technical, whether it's musicality later on, or even from the beginning, really putting the focus 100%. And I think that's super important. And this can only happen if we are good role models and we do it ourselves. So we cannot be teaching and be thinking about 10 million things. Even if the child needs, you know, like Stephen was saying, you know, 100-point lesson, there's always something else that you can talk about. But if you keep your attention into all these other things, then you will lose the child, and the child will lose also the attention, and he or she won't learn the proper way, or won't really get to the point that you're trying to do. Having said that, and we can talk more about this, but in the concept of also mindfulness, we are focusing on something, but it doesn't mean that we are obsessively just thinking about the one thing like this. We need to keep our vision open, because obviously, I'm going to talk from a violin point of view, but you can all relate in your own instruments. If, for example, we're talking about sound and how to produce sound, we're really focusing on the sound and the attention is in the sound, but there is a problem of tension somewhere in the body. Unless we are able to see that, obviously, you can be talking about sound as much as you like, unless you address the tension in the body, it's not going to change. So it's one point, but it's also, at the same time, the open awareness to what's going on in the lesson. Open awareness of what's going on in the parent, if the parent is, you know, checking on the phone, or is kind of like, you know, doing funny body language or whatever it is. So let's open up this idea of focused attention with open awareness. any ideas and experiences on it that you might have had, or something that might have helped you, or things that you might have found difficult in that way. Yeah, go for it, Ingeborg.
Yeah, I have a very beautiful example, which is maybe nonsense, but I am also a Suzuki mother, and I'm not so very good with technical things like iPad and so on. The first time I took my iPad, my son immediately said, "Mama, you're not allowed to be on the iPad or the phone in my lesson." And we were laughing because it was so cute, because I tried to make the notes on the iPad, but I was like this because I didn't understand much of it. And I was so happy that my child wants me to be focused on him. It was like an eye-opener that for me, it's like, wow, my child is so direct, so open. I should be also more able to say that to the parents. So because I'm raised in Belgium and I live in Holland, and one of the main differences in culture what I experience is where I come from, maybe also because of the time where I came from, in a little village, people didn't allow to speak out what you really think. They were more polite but more careful, while here in Holland people are more direct in the city where I live. And I need to be direct. I need to be very clear to the parents. No iPhone, unless if you are making notes. And that's sort of things I learned so much from my child and from the teacher, which is Lisbeth, a Suzuki teacher that I really adore in his lesson. But I realized that my teaching before Suzuki, I understand where the failures were, because I thought that the parents should stay away, and I'm now very grateful that I learned how to communicate with the parents. But even that was one of the main things that also is still in development for me, because there's culture differences. There is a lot of ways of communication that I try to learn to be more inviting than to oblige them. So I have to find many ways how to make that stronger, because I think it's very essential in how it will work in to give it a chance with a child. It's really difficult for me.
Thank you for all that. You touched on so many important points that just to keep with the one point, I'm just going to focus on one thing that you said. Communication, all of those things are super important, and learning from the children and learning from each other, like we're doing here. Everybody learns from each other in the lesson, and it's really important to keep that in mind. But the thing what you touched that for me was the most important is what the children really want is your attention. As a parent, all they want is your attention. If you are on the phone, on the iPad, they will be able to. They can tell, and they will misbehave so that you can focus on them. And you can see that so clearly when you do group lessons, for example, and some of the parents are on the phones, and those children are just misbehaving so that the parent gets off the phone and looked at them. So all they want is your attention. We are talking about here cultivating that attention and focus. And we need to start ourselves, and parents and children. Everybody needs to understand that this is basically what we are working on as well. But the attention is super important. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to digress, but this thing about the parents, having the parents' attention, because in my observations, I'm also a mother and I have a lot of children and students, and observing them, I have deduced, and maybe I'm not the only one, that everything that children do is for the approval of their parents. I've seen this at soccer fields with children as well. That's my firm belief that they want the approval and the attention of their parents. I said this in a group of other music teachers in general, and they just didn't agree with me at all. But I believe that. So
Yeah. I think
I don't know if you can prove it or not, but
you need to prove it. Is quite obvious. I think, like you said, not just in music, in football, everywhere. Attention. If you give attention to somebody, if you give full attention to somebody, that you're giving your love, your time, and that's what they want. They want love and attention. That's what children crave, really, more than anything else. They want the connection with you, because the connection only happens when you got the attention, full attention, not just halfway. So I'm not saying it's always possible to keep your full attention to your child, but the more we can do it, specific times at least, it's really, really important for them, because then they will be much happier and rounded people. Anyone else on this attention seeking, attention focus? Would you like to? No? Everyone agrees. Yes. I mean, yes, Stephen, yeah, sorry.
So over the years, we send out every year a parent handbook, and it's grown from being quite small to quite large. We try and cover many scenarios, like, for example, what to expect at concerts, what to wear, sort of don't leave at the interval, stay to the end, lots and lots of things. One of the things we work on is having parents not have mobile phones in lessons. So we don't have mobile phones in either the Kodai musicianship class or the piano lessons. The exception is for them to take the odd notes. But that can backfire, because it can be a case where the parent is using the mobile phone to take a record of a small point, and I've had one in particular who can get in the visual sight line between me and the student and disrupt the concentration. But also that particular parent, when they use the mobile phone, it's really that they're doing it to sort of show me that they're paying attention, rather than use it for their own use at home. So I've asked them not to do it. So there is a video of one of Suzuki's talks, group lessons, etc., where he talks about where the parent needs to be in the room so that the communication between the teacher and the student is the best, where are the sight lines, etc. And when our space is actually limited, but I do try and have the parent in a space where they can still see what's going on, and but they're not disrupting the communication between myself and the student. Because if we have equal sort of sight lines, the child will be turning to the parent because they want to see the parent's reaction. So that's important. I don't want to exclude the parent or have them feel excluded, but it's just practical. So I think if one can explain to parents that this is actually in their child's best interest, they want what's best for their child, and then they will put their mobile phone away or use it with discretion. Or one can, as a teacher, take the point where you invite them to use a mobile phone to record a particular point here and there. And then you're in control of the situation for the benefit, again, of the child and the parent. So that's what happens. But we also have a notice on the wall that's been up there for years about, it's so old that it says, please don't use your mobile phone or computer games. Now, computer games are out of the window now, but it's been up there a long time. So, yeah, getting these sorts of things in place really quite early on is actually very useful. So it's something to actually maybe address before lessons actually start with parents. And they will have in our case, they will have observed lessons for a period before starting, so they have seen how other parents act in lessons and how the children act. So they will pick up something from that, unconsciously, probably. So I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. That's very helpful. Before I say anything, I think Norma, you wanted to add something to this?
Yeah, it was not important, but I was just wondering if you give every parent at the beginning a notebook and pencil that they can use to keep notes in, their own specific, and that might encourage them to use the pencil or a pen instead of, that's a personal choice, of course.
Personally, I actually don't want them taking notes during the lesson because they will, again, lose focus. And one of the things I'm trying to do is actually also train the parent to observe the lesson. And parents, like, well, human beings are in the most fabulous variety from many, many backgrounds, etc. And most of our parents are not English. They're from other cultures. Quite a few are Chinese. Some are Indian, etc. So they have different cultural background and ways of doing things and thinking about things. But they're also influenced by whatever happens at the school gate, what conversations there are, what other parents are doing, what other friends are doing, the zeitgeist at the moment. So, for example, yesterday I was trying very hard with a parent to teach them where to look when their child's playing. Now, I do this in parent lessons before they start, but you have to repeat things many times before they're actually absorbed. And very often parents will watch fingers, they will watch hands. And that's the least important part of playing the piano. What the whole body does is actually much more important. And if they only watch the hands, they won't notice, for example, if this is happening or something else to do with tension or body balance. And body balance is so important at the piano, I can't tell you. It's probably the same with every instrument. Violin you learn how to stand, cello you learn how to sit, etc. So important. So it's not enough for me to say this once. I have to observe where the parent's looking, what they're doing, and then, without being too nagging, try and put it across over a period of time. And again, with the understanding that nothing's perfect. Some parents will pick this up to maybe 20%, others 80%. And that's just the way it goes, but they will change a bit, hopefully.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, that's it's very true that the different backgrounds and even in the same background, people are different. They have different ways of doing things, and what is important is that they find a way that works for them, but also that we train them what is important for them to do as a parent in the lesson and also at home. So yes, completely right. I don't give notebooks either, but I would expect people to take notes, and I do make it very clear. And if possible, not to do it on a device, but on a notebook, because then you have it clearly. Week by week is a lot easier to then follow back and check and stuff like that. But that's very good. The other point you made, Stephen, about the attention to the parents. So if you have putting the parent in the right place in the room, I'm trying to say, I think it's a very good point, very practical point to what we're talking about, which is where the attention goes. If in the lesson you have the parent and the teacher and they're both in the same line of sight, the children will just get distracted in the same way that if the parent is too active or talking or asking too many questions, the child's attention will just go to the parent automatically. So it is really important, and I know this is one of the level 1 ideas in Suzuki, but it's important to keep saying it, that the teacher and the child has that full attention, and the parent is there, is in the room and is in the environment, but is not seeking attention or distracting or whatever it is, because then the child will not get what they need to get. So that, I think that's a very good practical point. So yes, keep that in mind for sure. And then just to move on to the next level of this 1 point. We stay with 1 point today. And the next level is something that, how to say? I think I always understood for a very long time, but I never really made a connection with the Suzuki method sometimes. I knew it more from a I'm gonna say from my training as a yoga teacher that I did many years ago, and through all the development and also through meditation. And I used it a lot for performance, but I never really understood that Suzuki also meant 1 point in that way. And the 1 point is that, I'm just going to show you. This is kind of below the navel. It's basically where we breathe more naturally. Talking about balance, Stephen, you were saying, that is the center of our body in many cultures and in martial arts, and also in meditation. They talk about hara, they talk about dantian. There's many ways of calling it, but it's basically this kind of like, if you have a fist below your navel, that's the core of your body. That's the center of gravity. That's where the balance can start. Most of the time, our attention, our breathing, it's up here. Attention is either in the head or in the chest, and it's all like this. And that creates anxiety, creates imbalance, really. And if we start ourselves as teachers by lowering our center of gravity and our attention to a much lower point below the navel, we will be able to have a much more calm way of talking, of directing the lesson, less talking, not so much in the mind, and not so anxious, not trying to do too many things, but, calming ourselves. And the child, through body language, through environment, will really get this, and will also kind of lower the energy to a much more calm state. So before we talk about this, if that's okay with everyone, I would like to just do an experiment. And it's a very simple experiment. It's abdominal breathing. So all I would like you to do is, it's easier if you've never done it before, to place your hands in the abdomen and just sitting as you are, with your as straight as you can without making an effort. Let's try to just do a few breaths. And when we breathe in, our breath is going to push our hands out. When we breathe out, we will feel how it's going in again. So we breathe in, going down, and breathing out. And let's just do a few of those. You can close your eyes if you prefer. Breathing in and breathing out. You can breathe through your nose. Or you can breathe out through your mouth. And just slowly keeping the attention under the navel. And slowly you can open your eyes again. You can keep breathing, please. Keep breathing under the navel. Keep your attention there. We can continue with our conversation, but whenever I do this, I can feel how suddenly all the problems kind of like, sink down, and there's not so much going on, and you can be more focused. Again, attention, all of this will improve. Stephen, you were going to say something.
Yes, I'm glad you talked about this, and it's very interesting coming from your background as a yoga teacher, etc. Mrs. Kataoka mentioned when we were in Japan a point 2 inches below the belly button as a point of balance, and she said there was a Japanese word for it that didn't translate into English. And Mrs. Kataoka was very I mean, she was very close to Suzuki in her teaching because she was different. She was her own person, but it wasn't accidental because she worked alongside him from 1955 to 98 when he died. And first as his accompanist, and if she was washing the dishes and he called, she'd have to leave straight away and go and accompany. So she was very close to him for many years. So Suzuki was also somebody who had enormous sort of life force and energy and spirit, and he was also somebody who was a great breather as well. But this point of balance, I'm sure it's crucial, again, universally for all instruments, but it's definitely absolutely crucial for piano. But it doesn't mean, I feel, that you necessarily think you have to be absolutely still. It's because that's not what balance means. So thank you for that. I will sit and do that before I start teaching today.
Yes, what I've done over the years, and now I'm doing it more with my teaching, but when I'm performing, when you're before performing, sometimes you have a little bit of that anxiety or nerves or, excitement, whatever it is. And through my training with breathing, I really always think of that abdominal breathing and just settles me down to, in a way, being able to communicate better with my instrument. And I find that it's the same way, obviously, with teaching. The more we're able to connect with ourselves, connect with our core, and be at peace, in a way, with ourselves, then you can respond, like you said, Stephen, you don't have to be calm. You don't have to be static. You can move around, you can do things, but it comes from a different place. It doesn't come from a reactive kind of, trying to catch things at the moment. No, you're coming from a place from stillness, from silence, and then you can speak a bit more focused and a bit more with more intention to what you're saying. So if you're gonna get 1 point from today, I would I would try to include some of that, maybe before you teach or during your teach, or sometimes when it's a difficult moment. It doesn't have to be only in teaching, you can do it anytime. But when you have a difficult moment in your teaching day and you're finding, a challenging student, or the student is, the attention is in a very different way, instead of trying to react to that and pull the strings and try to, everything you can, start with yourself and anchor yourself into that place, because then you will come from a place that will help the child to also lower the energy down. So that's the one thing I would like you all to try. But I would be interested if there's anyone else who's noticed this or tried this before, or come across about this in Suzuki, because I think it's not always very obvious in the training to talk about this.
Yeah.
I wonder, will we be able to find the phrase where Suzuki mentions this in his book or something?
I don't have it with me, but I'm sure in Nurture by Love, it's interesting. The more I read this Nurture by Love, the more nuggets of amazing information you find, because it's all there. It's just in between the lines sometimes, or it's one line that sometimes you disregard it, like, I don't know what this means. And then now with this new understanding, you can really get to the point. So if you're not sure, just read the whole book again.
Yeah, I will never forget what he said about always having chocolate in the music lessons.
Okay.
He wrote that one somewhere. But I just want to add one little thing, because I've been thinking about this week. I have a student, she's 8, and I don't think she has ADHD or something, but she's very, very smart, very bright, and her brain goes 100 miles an hour. So she comes home from school and she starts talking. And her last lesson, I tried to slow her down by walking slowly. It didn't quite work yet, but I'm going to do this, focusing on breathing, maybe just see if she can ground herself a little bit, because her brain is just going like that. So it might be very, very useful.
I think once you try it for yourself, that is something you can also ask the students to do if they need to. So definitely, yes. But I think it's very important that you embody it first and you understand it from your own point of view. Yeah. Ingeborg, you were going to say something as well.
Yes. I find it very beautiful that you say try to from yourself, from your center, create from out of that stillness, that peace, and as if you give it to the child who is running or too busy or too much moving. And I was doing my research for a Suzuki level 3 about Pilates. And the question was, would Pilates be integrated as a part of the daily life as a Suzuki teacher? And of course, there's a lot of lines between Pilates, yoga, Alexander technique, and all things that you mentioned. And whichever one you choose, it's about this stillness, and it makes us not only in the head and the brain and the thinking, but to be like united, body and mind and soul. And I believe that, yes, whichever name it is, Pilates, yoga, whatever it's called, it should be integrated in the Suzuki training. It should be integrated in every training, and also in education with a child, whatever culture you're from. And I think that's why very often Japanese people, they probably have it. They have another kind of mindset when they come in the studio. Or I can see the difference in culture, and where a lack of that is, there's a lot of work for us as a teacher, and that's why I started to find it for myself, which has been a very journey that is intensive in a way, but it's very helpful. And I was trying to integrate it in the teachers group where I was in Antwerpen, but it's very difficult to find participation, to involve my colleagues, because as long as you don't experience it, it's very hard to explain for me what the value is. So I hope that people who experience it will be able to share it, that more people can involve it in their lessons, because it has been a main change in my teaching in everyday life, and also especially with my child, to always ground first, and not only level with his energy, but just as a warming up, as a welcoming, to level with this beautiful energy, and then to find from your grounding, to try them to level to this calmness. That is one of the most important things in the lesson, I believe, because from this calmness, you can learn anything. That's what I believe.
Tamara is here. I've been including Pilates in my teacher training since, only because the course was here. So the Tamara and the Latvians, the Spaniards, the Danes used to come, and they'd see books here to do it. This is many, many years ago. And I'm not a teacher of Pilates, but as a result of that, I have used Pilates and included it in an informal way in my teacher training. But equally, anytime I've ever been to Latvia on the workshop, the national workshop, the teachers who invite me, not as a teacher trainer, now as a teacher, Suzuki teacher, always say, Mary, do a little bit of Pilates with the group lessons first. And it's amazing how the parents and the children love it. But I didn't sell it to them. It's thanks to the teachers in these countries. And it is amazing, the effect instantly. And it's about, in the beginning, it's just the standing and how to breathe. And anybody can do it. So yeah, so it's already being done for your level 3.
I'm very happy to hear that.
Mara, Christina, all that gang, all the especially and you could say, well, what about the Scots? The Scots too, but it's sometimes people, when they come to a country, they take things back and they use it more. Because originally I wasn't thinking of using it the way I would now. And my Scottish wonderful teachers in Scotland, they know about it, but it's sold more in place, especially Latvia. So get in touch.
Wow, beautiful. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. That's very interesting. And I just wanted to make a point of what you both said, that in a way that whether it's Pilates or yoga, whatever it is, or even if it's just simple breathing exercises, but to do something to connect mind and body, to be aware of our body while we're playing. I think as performers, as musicians, and for the children who are developing as musicians, to understand that it's not all here, that we're playing with our bodies, and therefore we need to really engage the body fully. And it is much easier if we're doing it from the center of the body, not from up here. You know, like Stephen was saying earlier, it's very easy for musicians and for the parents to keep our attention into the things that we're doing, you know, the fingers, the arms, everything here. But actually, it is the whole body that is playing. It's not just a part of the body that is playing. And that can only happen if the mind and the body are working together. You know, the full attention is in the whole body and you can feel it. But that is a training that we need to do ourselves, of course, as teachers, as instrumentalists, musicians. But it's also a training that we need to give to children and to the parents, and to be very aware of, tension in the body, for example, that you will hear it in the sound. Not just that it will be harmful in the future, but actually it is something that it's going against what you're trying to do. So it's really, really important to somehow, whatever the tradition, whatever your way of doing it is, to involve some sort of body-mind connection and awareness of what you're doing. And that's why I wanted to talk about the 1 point today, not just the 1 point lesson, but the 1 point in that way, in a way that it connects as well people. You can connect much better if you are in your center of gravity and you invite the other person to be as well. You don't even have to say it, but if you are, the other person will also kind of level you, and you will find a much more satisfying way to communicate and to connect without having to say 10,000 words to do so. And that goes again, communication comes again with listening, and listening, we know how important it is. So I personally feel that when I am more centered, and it's not all the time, I'm not that amazing, it happens to me as well, but whenever I remember to bring myself down to this center, I find myself talking less and listening more. And I think that is the beginning of communication. So I invite you all to also try that, because it's very helpful to, like Stephen said earlier, to talk less. And you can learn a lot more, and everybody else gets to learn a lot more, because there's so much going on here, and there's everywhere these days. And it's really important that we cultivate this presence, this just being there. The whole environment, the whole environment, the lesson at home, whatever it is, will change as well, and it will be a much more learning environment, much more nurturing for the children to learn. That's a lot of words for saying not to talk. Anyone else would like to say something? we nearly finished. If there's any last minute things that you would like to add or something you would like to try, yes, Tamara, go for it.
I feel very, very close to me this approach to one point as living point, as thinking, as feeling point in general, one for me is problem one point lesson. When I have to achieve task, some small things anyway, and there is a lot of things, and I have a lot of to do, and choose one point. Like in beginning, you said there is several forms. For me, it's clear form. Then I choose one point in one piece, and then the same point in several other pieces, and that is one point lesson for me. But it not ever happens, and then I'm confused. And do you have some advice or some your experience about that?
I'm going to give you my idea on this, and I'm sure there will be others who can say just. But let's keep it short, because otherwise this meeting will go for a bit too long. I'm sure people have things to do. I think what's helpful is priorities. What do you prioritize to put your attention in? You put your attention in something that is very small and very precise to one piece. It will be very hard to then keep that point going through. And is that the most important thing? For example, if, for example, the position of the pinky on the piano is not the right way, or the hand posture, but maybe posture can be a bit more of a bigger point that is more important. And because you're addressing the posture, that includes the pinky being round. And then you can continue with that work with something else. So sometimes we need to find a point that is more of a, how to say it, primary point. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't want to say basic point, but something that is more important, that then will have more consequences. It could be sound production, but how do we work on that? Sound production could be from many different angles, including posture, including breathing, including sound. Anyway, there's so many ways for sound. That's a different topic. But I would always try to find a point that is more primary or more important, and then from there you can go to the details. Something a bit broader to then go more precise. That would be my thing to say, and of course keeping yourself rooted, like we said before. Anyone else, Mary or Stephen or Leo or anybody would like to join in?
Just one say what you just said made me think of the word umbrella, because you found the point that if you choose that one, a whole lot of other things are within that. You've covered a lot of area by going to the whole body, which includes the arm and the hand and the fingers. That was my thought.
Thank you. Stephen?
I think one has to react to the child in front of one and what stage they're at. And you can teach more than one point. As Gwynam said, it's priorities. You can work in priorities. So it's like you get one level, and if that's okay, you can do 1 and 2. If that's okay, you do 1, 2, and 3. But as a teacher, I would let yourself off the anxiety hook. You're probably doing absolutely fine. And like I said, different stages require different things. So if I'm teaching an advanced 17-year-old, I'm going to give them more than 1 point. But I'm still going to be concentrating always on what tone they're producing and how they're using the body. So the fundamentals are already there, but it's at a different stage. If I'm teaching a 3-year-old, I'm hopefully not going to be giving too many points. And I know myself that it's very tempting to actually overteach and give too much. So self-reflection is good, but guilt is not. So, or I would, like I said, let yourself off the hook if that's creeping in at all. You're probably fine.
Yeah, I would just reiterate what Stephen says. Tamara has very high standards of everything and has observed so much over all the years. And anytime I ever see Tamara teach, the joy and the pleasure that the pupil and the parent and the connecting with the parent is phenomenal. So I think I would take Stephen's advice here, Tamara, and we are all the time, all of us. I think you don't realize that we are all the time working on these things, but maybe we don't beat ourselves up, Stephen and myself, as much as Tamara does. So I would say that's what, do keep doing what you're doing, but bear that in mind from two more senior, meaning maybe a year or two older than you, more experience. We don't ever stop working on this particular area of how the value we can give when we have a small time with each child and each parent, what we give them, and if we can know that we will continue forever to grow ourselves through what we do. I think that's the biggest thing. And you are a great example of this. I know you inside out and upside down. And I'll see you next month in Riga. So thank you for the question, though.
Okay, I just wanted to add something and also to finish off. And maybe that's also another way to understand 1 point and all these things that we're talking about. Something that Stephen said, over teaching. I think many times we think about teaching too much, and teaching is not what's important. What's important is what they're learning. What is the child learning, not what you're teaching them. You know, if you try to do too many, if you try to teach too many things, the child's not going to learn any of it. It's going to be too much, and it's not going to sink in. If you think of what is the child learning, what is really taking home, what is really going to be something that they can work on during the week and focus and have that deeper understanding of it, then you will change the way you're teaching it, because you will think from an educational point of view. And I think that just kind of sums what Stephen was saying as well. Try not to teach too much, but think about what the child is learning as well. That's the more important point, the 1 point. At the end of the day, the child is important, the important person here we need to take care of. Okay, if there's something else, I just want to say thank you for being here in this brainstorm. It's been wonderful to be with all of you and to learn together. No, there's no teachers here, there's just learners. And please, if you take something with you, let me know how it works. And if you try this 1 point, if you think about it more, if you try it with your students, if you try them by yourselves at home, let me know if it's made a difference. And yeah, there will be more brainstorms, so I hope to see you soon. Thank you all.
Goodbye.
Thank you
so much.
Bye.
Bye everybody. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Bye.
Thank you.